Ah, Lestrade. What is it this time?
He can see me. Well, here it is, and it's a good one, Mr. Holmes. A gentleman by the name of Peter Carey, also known as Black Peter, has been murdered.
My archive. I can always consult with it, if needed. This is where I keep my post. My archive.
Oh, what a mess! What a terrible mess!
You go along to Peter Carey's house. Mrs. Hudson and I will take care of the mess you've made here.
Mr. Holmes, I'm over here. Come on.
It seems that the garden was well maintained.
Mr. Holmes?
Inspector Lestrade, when will you remove my husband's body? It's sacrilegious to leave him here like this.
As soon as we can, Mrs. Carey, I assure you. Allow me to introduce you to Mr. Sherlock Holmes. He's a detective. No doubt you've heard of him. I'll wait for you in front of the cabin, Mr. Holmes.
My condolences, Mrs. Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes.
Can you please tell me what occurred on the evening of the murder?
Well, Peter got drunk in the evening. He was in such a terrible temper. Usually whenever that happened, he'd stay all night drinking in his cabin before passing out.
Do you remember at what time you found your husband's body?
In the morning, at around 7 o'clock. I noticed the cabin door was open, but I didn't go in to take a look, for I knew my husband would not have liked it. At around 10 o'clock, I dared to glance in through the door and... oh dear.
Was your husband accustomed to receiving visitors?
Oh, no, I don't think so. I mean, he didn't really have many friends. We lived quite an isolated life here, after his retirement.
You have indeed suffered a great loss, Mrs. Carey. Nevertheless, I believe it will be less of a burden for you soon.
Yes. Life with Peter was never easy, but he was still my husband.
He was different, wasn't he, when you first met him upon your return from Plymouth?
Yes, Mr. Holmes. Oh, my goodness, but how do you know about that?
You undertook a pilgrimage to the Cathedral of Santiago de Compostela when you were young. That much is evident from the rosary in your hand. The shortest route for the pilgrim from England to Spain is from Plymouth. I believe that you met Peter Carey as a young sailor there, and you married him soon afterwards.
That is indeed what happened, Mr. Holmes. How extraordinary.
Thank you, madam.
Peter Carey's body is inside the cabin. We took care not to touch anything.
The door is locked.
Wait just a moment, Mr. Holmes, and I'll open it. I locked it yesterday to ensure that no one should enter the cabin and tamper with the evidence.
Ah, good thinking. These abbreviations mean something, but what? Someone was here yesterday. They attempted to force the door to gain entry.
Well, Mr. Holmes, what do you think?
I think that we are lucky
And why is that?
because of last night's attempted break-in.
Oof, you've lost me.
It is very probable that whoever came here hoped to find the door open. They tried to force it with a knife blade, but they failed. What will they do? Why, return tonight, when they will be better prepared.
Aha! So what do you propose?
We shall remain on the outside, near the window, where we stand the best chance of catching sight of our visitor. Well, gentlemen, ready your pistols. We have a long night ahead of us. This looks like the perfect hiding place.
Mr. Holmes, come and see what we've caught in our net. All right, my fine fellow. Who are you and what are you doing here?
You're detectives, I suppose. You imagine that I'm connected with the death of Captain Carey. I assure you I'm innocent.
Innocent? And what are you doing in his cabin?
Shall I tell you? You came to retrieve what you had lost after killing Peter Carey, but we were here waiting for you.
What is your name?
John Hopley Nelligan, but I didn't...
Do you deny that you came here yesterday?
No, but yes, it's just that I couldn't...
I'm tired of this. Off we go to the yard. Tomorrow, I'll see that you're put in front of the judge.
What? But you can't! I'm not... It's a terrible mistake!
Enough! You can explain all of that to the judge. You're coming with me to the yard.
But...
In light of recent events, it seems evident that your coming here was unnecessary. All the same, I'm very grateful to you, Mr. Holmes.
You are welcome, Inspector, but please don't be too hard on our young fellow. I would like to question him tomorrow morning.
Good morning, Mr. Holmes. Can I help you?
Good morning, Constable. I would like to speak to the fellow who was arrested at Woodman's Lee last night.
Ah, the young man. He's waiting in the interrogation room. You can go straight through. His belongings are held in the evidence room.
Thank you.
Mr. Holmes?
I have heard the story of Dawson and Nelligan, the West Country bankers.
Yes, Joshua Nelligan was my father.
I am aware that it had a bad ending. When the bank failed, it ruined half the families of Cornwall, whereupon Joshua Nelligan disappeared.
My father was under extraordinary pressure. Dawson had retired. I was only 10 years of age at the time, but it was still old enough to feel the shame that befell our family. My father was convinced that he could pay off all his debts if the creditors gave him time. He set sail for Hammerfest in Norway in his small yacht, just a few days before an arrest warrant was issued. He left my mother a list of the securities he was taking. No word was ever heard from him again. We believe that his vessel went down, taking with it everyone and everything on board.
Thank you for the story, Mr. Nelligan. At last, we are making some progress. Interesting. Joshua Nelligan and Peter Carey were both at sea in Norway. There is definitely some connection between Peter Carey and Joshua Nelligan's disappearance.